This episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi everyone, I'm Tonya.
And I'm Talia.
And we are Crimes and Consequences, a true crime podcast. Talia.
Hey, Tonya.
How are you today?
Today's a good day. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I have a new weekly episode today.
Yay!
So I'd like to welcome everyone back to another exciting episode.
Yes.
Crimes and Consequences.
Consequences for the crimes.
And today, the episode that I'm going to do was suggested by one of our members. Her name is Carly PC, and she suggested it via our members-only Facebook group.
Oh, thank you, Carly.
So thank you, Carly. So I'm just going to get into it.
Okay.
Oh, but before I do,
don't
forget to hit the subscribe or follow button on whatever app you're listening to. Now I'm really going to do it.
Okay, let's do this. You're killing me.
On March 31st, 1986, on Long Island, New York, a very shy and lonely little girl by the name of Christine Paolilla was born. Christine's father, Charles, supported the family by working construction, while her mother, Lori, was a stay-at-home mom to Christine and her older brother, John. What seemed like an everyday, normal family dynamic from the outside, when you looked in, it was actually the complete opposite.
Oh.
You know, looks can be deceiving.
Yes, we know that.
While her father provided for the family and kept them afloat financially, he was also a full-blown heroin addict.
Oh, shit.
I know. Unfortunately, when Christine was just 2 years old, her father was killed in a construction accident while on the job. Apparently, a bunch of bricks fell on top of him. Oh. Yeah.
Wow.
While he was working on a high rise in New York City. Like, what a fucking way to go.
Oh,
Yeesh.
Jesus.
Right? To make matters worse, just a couple of months after, Christine also ended up losing her grandfather and then her great-grandmother, one right after the other. At this point in her life, little Christine had turned to her mother and said, "Mommy, I don't understand. Why is it that people I love go away?"
Oh, that's sad.
It is very sad. When Christine was in kindergarten, she was diagnosed with alopecia, which is a condition that causes your hair to fall out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can fall out in patches, while other times some people go completely bald. Christine, unfortunately, was a part of the latter. She lost all of the hair on her head, her eyebrows, and her eyelashes. This condition made her feel overwhelmingly self-conscious and unsure of herself. I mean, right? Especially, she's just a little girl. For some women, you know, our hair is everything. It's our identity.
Right.
Absolutely. It's important. Lori said when Christine would wake up in the morning, there would be clumps of hair all over her pillow. As if that wasn't enough to deal with, Christine's home life was completely turned upside down when her mother became so overcome with grief over the loss of her husband that she succumbed to and fully gave in to her own temptations. She let her demons get the best of her and began excessively abusing drugs. And as a result, she ended up losing custody of Christine.
Oh, man.
Along with her older brother. When Christine was 7 years old, she and her brother were sent to live with their grandparents on the opposite side of the family. At the time, Christine didn't fully understand what was happening, so she would call Lori and say, "Mommy, can't I come home?"
Oh, man.
It's just sad. Her self-confidence was at an all-time low. She never felt comfortable in her own skin, which is a big reason why she began wearing wigs to cover up what she had lost and hide what she was already so ashamed of. The last thing she wanted was for the other kids to be able to see her baldness. She was traumatized over it.
Of course.
But as bad luck in life would have it, things didn't quite work out that way. She constantly tried to compensate by wearing big, bulky wigs and drawing on her eyebrows, but the kids could see right through the facade she created.
They're mean.
Yes.
Kids are mean, so.
They would rip her wigs off her head.
Oh, man.
I know, while she was walking to class, and her eyebrows would easily smudge each time she sweat, so you can imagine the field day these mean-ass kids had at her expense.
God.
She was teased relentlessly at school, which gave her quite the complex. The fact that she also had poor vision and was forced to wear thick glasses, Coke bottle glasses, as her mother would call them, didn't help make matters much better. She was constantly ridiculed for her appearance and bullied by her classmates on a daily basis. Thankfully, Christine and her brother were eventually able to be reunited with their mother when she finally overcame her drug addiction and turned over a new leaf. The three of them started over once again and created a new life for the family when they decided to pick up and move halfway across the country to Friendswood, Texas.
Okay.
Do you know where Friendswood is?
No.
It's part of the Houston, Woodland, Sugarland metropolitan area.
Yeah, it's still the same. Well, I mean, I know Houston.
Yeah. I had a friend that lived in Friendswood.
No.
Not there anymore. You know who you are. Anyway, the area that they moved to is the 5th most populous metropolitan area in the United States. It encompasses 9 counties along the Gulf Coast in southeast Texas. Once there, Christine's mother met, fell in love with, and married a man named Thomas Dick.
Thomas what?
Dick.
Okay. All right.
When Christine was in 8th grade, she began a relationship with this guy named Christopher. I'll call him Chris. Christopher Lee Snyder, who was described as pushy and aggressive. He had a criminal record and a hard drug habit. He was 15 at the time and she was in 8th grade, so it's about 13.
Okay.
Her parents definitely didn't approve of this relationship, but they wouldn't have to worry for long because Chris was sent away to serve time in Kentucky for stealing a car.
Oh, shit.
At the ripe old age of 15.
Damn.
By Christine's junior year in high school, she was able to start completely fresh, and she enrolled at Clear Lake High School, which was about 15 minutes from Friendswood. It's in what's known as the Clear Lake region, which is a fairly prosperous area in Houston. It's home to the Johnson Space Center, which is home to our astronaut corps, the International Space Station mission operation, and much more.
Okay.
It was a new beginning with new faces and new everything for Christine. The kids, though, may have had different faces, but their mean dispositions were all just about the same as she experienced before in her last school.
I'm sure.
At the end of the day, she simply just wasn't happy, regardless of the cheerful demeanor she tried to put on. She dealt with the same bullshit as before, except this time it wouldn't last nearly as long, because she was befriended by 2 of the most popular girls in her school.
Oh.
Normally, this would seem like a cruel joke. I mean, movies have been made for this type of shit, right? But, they were going to make friends with the ugly girl and, make fun of her, but that didn't happen. These girls were genuine. I mean, they really wanted to be her friend.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. One girl was named Rachel Kularodis and her best friend, Tiffany Rowell. They were among the most popular and pretty girls at Clear Lake, and they decided they wanted to befriend the bullied girl. And while this was confusing to Christine at first, she never had friends, really, in elementary or middle school, but there was no doubt that their intentions, Tiffany and Rachel's, were good. The girls who were 1 year ahead of Christine taught her everything about fashion and how to fit in better with the students. They showed her how to dress and how to apply makeup so it didn't clash with her Coke bottle glasses, and they taught her all she needed to know about the wigs she needed to buy.
Wow, that's really nice of them.
Yeah, it was. At the end of the day, these 2 girls single-handedly turned around Christine's whole life in the best way possible. Up until this point, I've told you, Christine's life had been filled with just misfortune. But now these girls helped her really turn things around and life was on the up and up. As a result, in 2003, Christine was voted Miss Irresistible by her school's student body.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
These 3 girls were pretty much inseparable. They would spend all of their free time together, giggling, taking pictures, and Christine even wrote about her love for both of these girls in her notebook. For once, Christine felt safe enough around someone. She didn't feel the need to wear her wigs in front of Rachel and Tiffany, and this was a huge leap in trust for her. Considering, Christine even told her mom that Rachel and Tiffany were the sweetest girls she'd ever met. And she wasn't wrong. They were genuinely sweet girls. Life was perfect at the moment. But it wouldn't be for too much longer.
Because that's why you're telling this story.
We wouldn't be here.
Nope. And that's the end.
Yes. They rode off into the sunset. No. In February of 2003, remember I told you about that guy, Chris?
Yeah.
Well, he was 18 years old at this point, and he was released on parole.
So this is years later?
Mm-hmm. About 3 years later. And he asked to be transferred back to Texas. It was granted, and he immediately sought out Christine. As toxic as these two were together, nothing stopped them from becoming boyfriend and girlfriend once again. And I told you before, Christine's mother and her stepdad didn't approve of Chris.
Well, yeah.
But not only them, Rachel and Tiffany didn't like him either. The girls told Christine that she could do much better, and there was another guy out there for her who would treat her with dignity, respect, and kindness like she so rightfully deserved. They were all concerned with Chris's extensive criminal background, and even more so his frequent drug use, especially since his drug behavior would get worse after reconnecting with Christine. I mean, he's out, right? Now it's time to party it up.
Well, after 3 years, I'm surprised they were reconnecting.
I know. Lori would later recall that Chris would constantly isolate Christine from her friends and family. He never wanted her to hang out with her friends, really anyone that wasn't him. I mean, it was like an obsession.
Because he's a controlling dick.
Right. Lori saw their relationship as both abusive and beyond dysfunctional. She admitted that she was scared of Chris and there was just something in his eyes that she was afraid of. Chris treated Christine like complete shit, especially in terms of mental and emotional abuse. He showed up one day to her school just to pull off her wig in front of her fellow classmates.
What an asshole.
Right? While this might send most girls screaming for the hills, Christine still loved and craved Chris's attention. It was almost a sickness. She demanded rough and violent sex from him constantly.
Shit.
I know. Almost as if she wanted and needed to be punished by him. Her parents tried to ground her and take her things away in order to keep her away from Chris, but it didn't work. Once her parents discovered she was taking drugs with Chris, they went to extreme lengths to try and separate the two. They called the police, lawyers, and anyone that might be able to help their situation. They tried to get a restraining order against him and even attempted to have him locked up, but this didn't work out for them. With all the drama surrounding Christine's life, as well as the drugs and the violence with her and Chris's relationship, the friendships between Christine, Rachel, and Tiffany kind of dwindled. This didn't exactly happen in a negative manner. There were no hard feelings whatsoever between the three. And even as their friendship disintegrated, Rachel still carried in her purse a picture of the girls with a message scrawled on the back from Christine that read, quote, "Damn, we've had some crazy memories. I love you," end quote.
Aw.
So while Christine was consumed by Chris every waking second, the other two girls went on with their lives. They were still best friends. At the time, Tiffany was living alone at her family home. Her mother had died from cancer several years earlier, and her father remarried and moved to Manville, which I believe is in Texas, leaving her to complete her graduation on her own. It was about a half an hour away, that Manville.
Okay.
So she's living in this house alone. To keep her company, Rachel eventually decided to move in with her. Tiffany's boyfriend, Marcus Ray Purcella, who was a drug dealer, he was there pretty much 24/7. So there was definitely a lot of coming and going in and out of that house. Not to mention, Tiffany's house quickly became the place kids would go to party and get fucked up. 3706 Millbridge Drive was the place to be, apparently.
Oh, I'm betting it's not.
No. And July 18th, 2003 would be no different in that respect. The girls were planning on throwing a party that night, so they were anticipating guests shortly after dinner time. Around 3 p.m., a friend of Tiffany's called her phone to see what the plans were for the party that evening. At the time, Marcus had answered saying Tiffany's in the bathroom. The friend said she'd call back in about 30 minutes, and she did, but no one, not even Marcus, picked up this time. She was in the area, so she drove over. It was about 6 p.m. at this point. She walked into the house, and she was greeted by a horrible sight. There were bodies and blood everywhere.
What?
After seeing the carnage inside the house, she immediately ran out of the house yelling, "Call the cops," to whoever who could hear her. Among the dead were Rachel and Tiffany, and they weren't the only casualties in the house. There were two other victims, 19-year-old Marcus, and that was Tiffany's boyfriend, if you remember.
Yeah.
And Marcus's cousin, 21-year-old Adalbert Nicholas Sanchez.
Okay.
He was known as D. Ironically enough, D had just moved to Clear Lake a week prior to get away from the trouble he faced back home. He came to Clear Lake for what he was hoping would be a fresh start and a new life. Dee was found with multiple gunshot wounds, one to the middle of his forehead, one in his neck, one in his left arm, 2 rounds in his torso, and one in his left shoulder. Dee was sitting on the couch opposite Tiffany, with his head leaning slightly on the headrest of the couch facing to the right. He was laying in a way that looked as though he may have been sleeping when everything went down, definitely not in a defensive mode.
Was he in a bedroom?
No, he's in a sofa in the living room. There was also a large halo of bloodstain in the back cushion behind where he lay. Marcus had been shot in the head, stomach, right forearm, and right shoulder, as well as he had a bullet graze wound across his chest. Additionally, it appeared as though he had been beaten. He ended up with blunt force head injuries. There was a cluster of patterned abrasions on his right temple and 5 lacerations found on the back of his head. There was also a star-shaped pattern of blowback, the remnants of gunpowder from the killer walking up to him, holding the barrel of the gun to his head and firing.
So was he cut with a knife, the lacerations? Or
I think he might have been hit with the gun, is my guess. He was found lying on the carpet on his side with his chest and stomach up against the side of the couch. Rachel had been beaten the worst, considering how many lacerations, abrasions, and blows her skull had endured. But she also had been shot in the lower abdomen. She had been shot directly in her vagina.
What?
Which,
Wait, what?
I know, which can be seen as like sexual
Tonya?
envy.
What the fuck is that?
I know. 5 rounds into her right thigh, 1 in her left buttock, 3 to her left shin, and 1 to her right foot.
Wow.
And this is horrible. Even though she had been shot 12 times, Rachel was still alive. Like, those shots didn't kill her. And she crawled on the floor to try to get to the phone to call 911.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No, and her killer saw her do this. And so her killer took hold of their pistol and bashed the gun in Rachel's head until she eventually died.
Jeez.
She was found face down on the floor in front of the TV with her arm outstretched and her fingers close to a phone that she was lying next to on the floor.
Wow.
Later, police would find blood prints on the number 911 showing she did try to call for help. She had bruises on her body consistent with falling down, but also bruises on the back of her left hand, which were consistent with trying to fight off her attacker. Rachel clutched a clump of her own hair in her right hand. Tiffany was found on the couch with 1 foot leisurely on the chair in front of her, as though she was just simply kicking back and relaxing when everything happened. Because neither she nor Dee had moved from their lounge positions, that showed they knew their attacker. Or at least that's what the police thought. Tiffany had a bullet wound in her forehead, and she had been hit in the chin, left cheek, left shoulder, lower left abdomen, just to the right of her vagina, right leg, right knee, and right shin. That's everywhere she was shot.
What the hell is this?
It's carnage.
Right.
Nothing was taken off their bodies, and no money or any valuables were taken from the home. With so many gunshots, close to 40, from 2 different caliber guns, it meant that either one killer had brought 2 weapons or
2 killers.
2 separate shooters.
That's what I'm betting on. I don't know this story. That's what I'm guessing.
A scattered, chaotic mess of magazines, pop cans, papers, and other household items were strewn across the living room floor, which indicated some type of struggle. The crime scene was littered with law enforcement and surrounded by curious neighbors and concerned friends and family members. Rachel's father, George, was among them. He arrived at the scene in a state of absolute terror and panic and immediately tried to breach the police barricade that had been set up around the crime scene. There's a video of him, and you can see him on the video approaching the police, crying uncontrollably, begging them to let him get past. And he was saying, "My daughter's in there, my daughter's in there." A couple of witnesses, next door neighbors Craig and Michelle, they had reported seeing 2 people near the house earlier that afternoon. They said there were 2 people dressed in all black, which is odd because it was blazing hot that day. It's fucking Texas in July.
Oh, so like fully clothed.
Mm-hmm. And these people had stopped at Tiffany's truck and looked in the side window and at the back of her vehicle. Michelle said one was a girl, and the girl stood out to her. She was a white female with sandy blonde straight hair, fair skin, and a clear complexion. She was cute, maybe 18 to 20 years old, 5'7" or so, 115 to 120 pounds. She said the girl was wearing a black top, white shorts, black platform sandals, and a black bandana on her head. She also had a black purse slung around her right shoulder.
Because you need that purse when you're going in to kill a bunch of people.
Yeah, Michelle said that purse looked like it was heavy.
Oh.
So maybe there was guns inside, right? The boy was a white male with fair complexion and sandy blonde hair. He was shorter than the female. He was thin, they guessed. They said maybe he was about 18 to 20 years old. They had never seen either one of these kids before that day. They saw both approach the house and then disappear out of view as they walked up closer to the front door. And that was that. They didn't think much of it. The witnesses went downtown, and with the police, they put together a composite sketch of the two suspects. There was another neighbor, Nancy. She lived 2 doors down from Tiffany, and she was next door neighbors to Michelle and her husband. She took a short nap that day while waiting for a friend to pick her up. Sometime after 3, she was startled awake to what sounded like a metallic ping sound. There were 2 pings at regular intervals with a slight pause in between, and then a light pause, and then 5 very fast pings.
Pings.
So she was hearing, I think, the gunshots.
Yeah.
She said it sounded like fireworks.
Okay.
While the composite sketches would have most likely been helpful in the investigation, police didn't release it to the public for fear that the neighbors may have seen these 2 suspects on a different day, like maybe they got it mixed up.
What?
But mostly they also considered that they could have seen 2 drug dealers and didn't want to tip them off. After all, that's what the police fixated themselves on.
Oh.
They thought that because Marcus was a drug dealer and these murders seemed to have been done execution style, they thought maybe they were dealing with the mafia or a drug cartel.
The mafia?
I know. Is there still a mafia?
All right. Really?
I don't
a bunch
know.
Of teens?
Girl, I don't know. Additionally, the girls had just started new waitressing jobs at a pretty shady strip club, so they thought maybe they could have drawn some unnecessary attention from some unwanted admirers. The majority of the police's investigative efforts were honed in on these 2 ideas, but they mainly focused on this drug dealer theory. However, at the end of the day, the investigation went absolutely nowhere. They were so hyper-focused on one area that they let a few things slide right under their noses.
Yeah, I think I know what they let slide, but go ahead with the story.
So remember, I started the story by telling you about Christine.
Yes.
So Christine said she couldn't bear to attend the funerals of Tiffany and Rachel, so she didn't. After the girls were gone, she was counting down the days until she turned 18 because she was going to inherit some money because when her father passed away 16 years earlier.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She was going to get some money from that. She went through school like a zombie and she didn't talk or get along with anyone. And even though a part of her was scared of him, Chris was still a very big part of her life during the fall of 2003. He was doing drugs with her and committing crimes with her left and right. In late October, the 2 were picked up and booked for shoplifting. She got off with a slap on the wrists and a warning to do better. She ran away at one point, stating she was planning to move in with Chris, but she returned home a week later. Chris's sister, Brandy, said Christine became known as the psycho, quote-unquote, around their household.
Oh, that's not a good nickname.
No. It was due to her obsessive behavior and crushing jealousy, she described. Evidently, Chris had to call the cops on her numerous times.
Chris called the cops on Christine?
Mm-hmm. Even her own parents had to call the cops on her a few times. Christine was known to have this underlying rage that would come out, and when it did, watch out. Most of the fights she had with Chris were brought on by her crippling jealousy, which would transform her into this blind fit of rage. If Chris so much as looked in the direction of another girl, Christine would hit him.
Oh, fuck.
When the couple got into some particularly nasty fights, Christine would refuse to leave Chris's house and instead sleep on the front lawn.
Oh.
Until he eventually would let her inside. In the meantime, she would spend all night trying to break into the house, yelling at the top of her lungs, going absolutely nuts, rattling the screen door, and pretty much anything else that she could use to cause a disturbance. And Chris lived at home, by the way, so his parents believed that their relationship was tumultuous, to say the least.
You think so?
And it was more than obvious that Christine was prone to jealousy to almost a scary extent. They recalled one night she slept on their front lawn all night long, through the morning, and repeatedly threatened to kill his family.
And they didn't call police, or did they call
Right.
that?
No. Brandy said, quote, she threatened to kill my mom, my dad, and even me. She was an absolute cancer to us, end quote. The abusive nature of their relationship reached its peak one night when an enraged Christine, without warning, stopped yelling at Chris, stared him down with a devilish smirk on her face, and licked his face from his chin up.
Oh, that's fucking weird.
Right? She then spat on the ground before walking away.
The hell is this?
There was one day, a Snyder family source noted, when Christine told him, quote, look, if you ever try to leave me, don't forget, all I have to do is get a gun, come up, and knock on your front door and blow your entire family away.
Okay, she's lost it. She's lost it.
Chris had told his family more than once that only two things frightened him in the whole world, the cops and Christine.
I thought he was the bad one.
Right. I know, right? Not long after the shoplifting charge, Texas authorities booked Chris as he had a warrant out for his arrest in Kentucky. Naturally, Christine wanted to follow him, but her parents weren't having it. This started a huge fight where Christine started spewing obscenities and threats toward her parents. Christine ran into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and put the blade on her wrists as if she was going to cut herself. When her stepfather, Tom, told her to stop, she held the knife up in a threatening manner, pointing the blade toward him. She held the knife above her head for a couple of seconds before finally putting it down to her side again, although still she was holding it. Tom quickly subdued her and called the cops. When the cops finally arrived, they were greeted by an extremely irate Christine, who was being held down by Tom as she punched, screamed, and kicked her legs in a ridiculously childish fit. Her mother said it was 15 years ago to that day that her father had died, so she was on new medication, and they didn't want to see her go away. They just wanted her to get help.
Did they get her help?
No. Well, like clockwork, 4 EMTs called to the scene, transported her to the Mainland Center Hospital for psychiatric treatment.
Okay.
As part of the deal she struck with the court, Christine was sent to drug rehab in Caryville, Texas. On November 1st, 2004, while she was in rehab, she met and fell in love with this guy named Justin Rott.
Oh.
He was a recovering long-term heroin addict. So forget Chris.
Okay.
She's now in love with Justin. They were obsessed with each other from day one and became almost like new addictions for one another. They fed off of each other. They were inseparable, and they almost immediately began a romantic relationship. After only having dated no more than 1 month, Christine decided she wanted to bring Justin home to meet her parents and spend the Christmas holiday with them. Before they made their trek out to Friendswood, Justin proposed to Christine on a bridge under the falling snow, and she, of course, said yes.
Sometimes you just know.
You just know. So they go to dinner at her parents' home, and Tom offered Justin a job and assured him he could help him get into the plumber's apprenticeship program. Things were going really well until the moment the murders were brought up. Justin could see Christine grow visibly uncomfortable, and her eyes grew wide as she side-eyed him. You know how you look to the side? Her mother had mentioned that she thought whoever was responsible for the murder should get the needle. Aside from that hiccup, the rest of their holiday went perfectly. They agreed that they wanted to move to Friendswood together and start new lives. Never mind the fact that she was going to come into about $360,000 from her father's death in just a few short months.
Which I feel like she would just blow.
Oh, she does, girl. Let me tell you. On March 22nd, 2005, the couple spontaneously eloped just like that. Then a few days later, they left Caryville, Texas, and made their way toward Friendswood. They planned to buy a condo when they got there, but for the time being, they stayed holed up in a motel, already spending Christine's new influx of cash. The ATM became a daily stop for both of them.
When you're 18, that's just like millions of dollars.
Right? It just seems like it's never going to end. Meanwhile, a year after they were originally produced, those composite sketches that I told you about, they were finally released to the public, and bulletin boards were put up all over town with the two suspects' faces. The Crime Stoppers tip line was ringing off the hook. Finally, they got the break they were looking for on July 28th, 2005, 10 days and 2 years after the murders, when the department received a call from an anonymous tipster who reported, quote, while Chris Snyder was drunk, he told me that he and his girlfriend, her name is Christine, I do not know her last name, killed the 4 people in Clear Lake. Chris said Christine's best friend was raped by the 2 males that we killed.
Oh.
So Christine and I went to the location and I killed the 2 males while Christine killed the 2 females. We wore bandanas over our faces, end quote. So.
You gotta watch the slip between the cup and the lip.
Right? That's a good one.
Yeah, I was told that in college one time.
Dude, those are words to live by, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your lips get awfully loose when you start to drink.
Just remember that. Watch the slip between the cup and the lip.
That's what I should name this episode. Christine and Justin purchased a new condo in Webster, Texas with some of her money. Everything seemed perfect until one day in July when Christine was watching TV and the 2 sketches popped up. She freaked out and asked her husband frantically if the sketch looked like her. Like, come on, dude. Justin didn't know exactly what was going on, but he knew it wasn't good. And he was pretty sure Christine had done something bad in her past. During this time, Hurricane Katrina was making its way through town, and the couple decided they were going to go for a druggy road trip. They didn't really care where they went, as long as wherever they ended up had drugs there. Seeing as San Antonio supposedly has some of the best dope around.
Well, there's drugs everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, for the record.
They headed to San Antonio. It was on this ride where Christine began spilling details here and there about what happened in her hometown years prior. Justin told her not to talk about it or tell anyone about it, and they ended up drowning themselves in a 24/7 drug stupor. On July 8th, 2006, 10 days before the 3rd anniversary of the murders, a call came into Crime Stoppers again. And before I tell you what they said, we're going to take a break. The tipster said, quote, I overheard Christine Paolilla talking about the murders in Clear Lake back in July 2003. Christine was in the Starlight Rehab in Center Point, Texas back in 2004, and I was in the same facility. It's important to note here that while the caller was in fact a male, it wasn't Justin. Many think that to be true, but that's incorrect.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. The tipster went on. She claimed that she helped her boyfriend commit the murders. I have no idea who the boyfriend is, but his name might have been Chris. I'm not sure. Christine, though, was a friend to one of the girls who was killed, end quote. Evidently, Christine, whether overcome with guilt or just all drugged up, confided in this tipster for a brief moment. They were alone one afternoon in the rehab, sitting together, talking.
You always get yourself in trouble when you open your fucking mouth.
Exactly. And Christine started the conversation, like how this all came about. She was like, so have you ever killed anyone? Somebody said, have you ever killed anyone? And she's like, yeah, I did. And
no, I didn't.
Yeah, no, never.
No. Why would you ask?
I know.
Why would you ask?
No, we're just some kids in a fucking rehab.
I don't think I've ever, I've never asked anybody if they've ever killed somebody, but maybe I'll start. Hey.
Tilly, have you ever killed anybody?
I haven't. Yeah. Have you?
No.
Oh, okay. End of conversation.
Right. No, never.
I was just, I'm curious if you had. What is this shit?
I know. The tipster said when Christine and Chris arrived at the house, Christine tried to back out of it, but Chris convinced her to go through with it. Then they went inside and opened fire. She had no idea who shot whom. She didn't know if she shot the girls or if he shot the boys because they fired at the same time as soon as they entered the house. It sounded as though they rang the doorbell and barged in while unloading the chambers of their weapons. Shoot first, and they were going to search for drugs and cash after. Those kids never had a chance. She also said that after leaving the scene, she became scared and worried that one of the victims could still be alive. And remember I told you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Christine walked back into the house. I'm not sure if the boyfriend went with her, but one of the victims was still alive, and this person was crawling on the floor. She was out of bullets and had to beat the victim to death with the butt of her gun. End quote. So that's why that happened.
Wow.
Christine and Chris had assumed that Marcus and Dee had a wad of money hanging around the house, along with a major stash of drugs. And when they found there was nothing, they got pissed. They had killed 4 people basically for nothing.
For nothing.
Christine and Justin found a new home at La Quinta on the I-10 in San Antonio, not too far away from one of Justin's drug suppliers. They had been there for about 7 or 8 months, paying for the room every 2 weeks by calling in a credit card. Can you only imagine how expensive that had to be?
Yeah. That's crazy.
In fact, Christine was so terribly consumed by the drugs she was interjecting that since they had rented the room back in December of 2005, she had never left it. Oh. The couple's head over heels love story went from being every girl's dream to hibernating amongst their own filth in a shitty motel where they survived off of Cheez-Its, packages of Reese's peanut butter cups.
Delicious.
They are delicious. Bottled water and pop, along with $250 worth of heroin and $250 worth of cocaine, aka a speedball, per day.
Oh, a speedball.
Yeah, they were doing $500 worth of drugs every day.
Wow.
The hotel room, I will post pictures of it. It's an absolute gross pigsty. Let me just tell you. There was Reese's wrappers, cups, alcohol swabs, packages empty or full of Marlboro Reds, bottles of rubbing alcohol. There was just hundreds of syringes around. Wow. Some used, some brand new. Scattered on the floor, there was animal feces from the dog that they kept.
Oh, God.
Dirty clothes, towels with bloodstains, vomit. I mean, it was just fucking nasty. I mean...
I'm surprised they didn't die.
I know. I'm surprised nobody got an infection, right? This is what the drugs did to them. If it wasn't for Christine's bank account and credit cards, they would have been homeless and on the streets. They didn't have much, but they did have a roof over their head for the time being. There was also a laptop computer in the room. This computer would turn out to be one of their downfalls. Behind the scenes, police were being told from a source responsible for tracking the hits on the Crime Stoppers website that there was one address repeatedly hitting the site every single day.
Oh.
The same IP address, it would turn out, belonged to that computer in Christine and Justin's hotel room. So Christine had been getting high and visiting the site that was devoted to catching her. On July 17, 2006, 2 arrest warrants were issued for both Christine and Chris. On July 19th, around noon, detectives showed up at La Quinta Motel. San Antonio's tactical unit had already been set up on room 111 and had surveillance set up around the entire perimeter of the hotel, not to mention eyes on the only door in and out of the room. The plan was to bust in, but it had taken the police 2 solid hits with the boom thing to bust the door open, then a good kick. That provided a warning and enough time for Christine to realize that trouble was on the opposite side of the door and soon coming in. She had jumped out of bed and, nearly naked, nestled herself into a corner of the room on the floor.
Like they're not going to find her.
I know. Hello. She was shaking and crying and shivering, mumbling to herself, "What's happening? Why are you doing this?" Lines very similar to what Rachel was pleading as Christine kept bashing her skull in, ironically enough. Cops stepped in, dog shit, and they surrounded the bed. They had Justin and Christine cornered. They weren't going anywhere. The room stunk of feces and body odor and garbage.
Gross.
It was completely disgusting. By 12:38 p.m., Justin was sitting inside the San Antonio Police Department in the Homicide Division headquarters. It took him no time at all to summon investigators saying, "I want to talk."
Yeah, I got something to say.
They knew why. Detectives sat with Justin inside an interview room. He was dressed only in pants and sneakers. He came across really fidgety and nervous, I'm sure. More from using heroin and cocaine than anything, but he had no trouble dropping the dime on his wife. Within a few minutes of sitting down, Justin had laid it out. He said, quote, "She told me that she was dating like a guy by the name of Chris Snyder, and the whole group, 4 of them, Rachel and all of them were friends," end quote. From that point on, it was hard to stop Justin from talking. He told police everything Christine had related to him about the murders, detail after horrifying detail. Justin said at one point, "Dude, it was just so brutal what she told me, It was all in close range, And then, just beating her over the head over and over again. I couldn't believe it," end quote. He said that his wife's narration of the brutal murders left him overwhelmed, and it used to give him nightmares. He said he was at first not able to believe what he heard from her and was in denial about it. He couldn't imagine his wife doing something as ruthless as that. Since Justin was on probation at the time of this arrest, police offered to forego the drug charge that they were going to put on him if he was willing to testify against Christine, and that's exactly what he did.
Yes.
I know.
Yes, please.
Sang like a canary. After interviewing Justin, police focused on talking to Christine. At about 1 p.m., Detective Harris entered the interview room where Christine sat in a chair, her legs crisscrossed and her feet tucked underneath her butt. She hugged a bright yellow blanket around her shivering body. Christine came across as a chronic dope addict in the throes of an addiction that was potentially at its peak. She wore a white nightshirt stained with dried blood from all those times she and Justin had stuck needles in their arm, which were countless. But she was coherent. She knew what was happening. She was moving back and forth, hugging herself, yawning, staring at the floor. Her hair was up in a bun, her eyebrows gone, leaving these 2 white bumps poking out from the bottom of her forehead.
So she had hair.
Mm-hmm.
But no eyebrows.
Yeah, no eyebrows. Her skin was ghastly white. The only other thing in the room was a video camera, which was facing her and blinking a red light to indicate everything she said was being recorded. It was close to 2:45 p.m. by the time Detective Harris pulled out a card and Mirandized Christine. He was certain, though, without a shadow of doubt in his mind, that from her posture and demeanor, as she talked her way through the murders, along with the interviews he had conducted throughout the case, not to mention the interview going on across the hall with Justin, that Christine was in fact lying through her teeth. He believed she was trying to pull one over on the police department and remove all culpability for this horrendous crime.
Wasn't me.
Wasn't me. So he told her, look, all I can go on is what other people have told me and what Chris has told me. After a long pause for dramatic effect, of course, he continued, I mean, you don't have to tell me anything. I'll just go with what we already have. And in case you hadn't noticed, that last line was total bullshit on the detective's part because they hadn't actually spoken to Chris yet. They hadn't even found him.
Yeah, but she doesn't know that.
Yeah, she doesn't know that. They didn't even know where he was at this point. This painful interrogation dragged on for days and pretty much got nowhere. Christine never admitted outright to doing anything or admitting any real guilt. She did, however, play the victim and place every last bit of blame on Chris. She swore up and down that he forced her to do this and that, take the gun, shoot the gun, etc. Like he was the puppeteer and she was the puppet, unable to control her own actions. She claimed she slept with her mother for a week after the murders took place, but that she never told her mom anything, never told friends, never told anyone. She really played up this victim card, making it seem as though she was terrified to come forward or reach out to anyone for help in fear that Chris would find out since he was always checking her phone. The truth was that Christine called Chris incessantly after the murders at all times of the day and night. It got so bad, Chris's mother later said, quote, I had to keep buying phones because our phone was drained so much it wouldn't recharge, end quote.
Damn.
And the idea that Christine was scared of Chris was further quashed by a statement Chris's mother later gave in reference to their relationship before and after the murders. She said Chris was so sick to death of Christine, but would always answer her calls and meet with her. I asked him one day, what does she have over or on you? That Christine is crazy. And Chris told her, Mom, you have no idea. Christine continued to stick to the fact that she was never inside the house that fateful day. Detective Harris kept trying to trip her up. But
I thought she said that he made her do it.
Yeah, he made her do it.
But she wasn't in the house.
But then Harris did catch her slipping up on numerous parts of her various and constantly changing story. He continued to question her, and her web of lies was getting far too large and complicated to keep under control. I mean, she just was fucking running her mouth about all kinds of bullshit. She swore she would have nothing to do with Chris after they committed the murder together, that she wanted to be as far away from him as possible. But between July 22nd, 2003 and August 2nd, 2003, just 11 days, the phone where Christine lived at the time, her mother's house, called Chris's home 84 times.
Jeez, oh, Pete.
I know, in 11 days, for a total of 454 minutes of conversation. And that's not counting the dozens upon dozens of times Chris's phone called Lori's phone, which, was Christine's mom. As a matter of fact, Lori's phone had called Chris's phone obsessively between July and December, thousands of times. I mean, it was wild, right? I mean, does she sound like she's scared of him? No. Houston Police Department Captain Dale Brown released a statement on July 21st, 2006, detailing Christine's arrest on first-degree capital murder charges. At this point, Chris still hadn't been located and was considered to be on the run. However, in the early morning hours of August 5th, 2006, The police found Chris's bloated and badly decomposed remains. One source said there was a lot of bones and that his body was just bloated and unrecognizable. They said a lot of animals had come up to him during those 2 weeks and nibbled at him.
Ooh.
Chris had gone on the run and burrowed into a deeply settled area of brush underneath a canopy of vegetation approximately 20 feet from a creek that ran through the center of a wooded area. He had gotten himself comfortable. He had a 2-liter bottle of Coke nearby and an empty prescription pill bottle scattered around him. It was evident that he had come to this exact location to die. By the look of things, he had made his peace with death in his final moments. Christine asked for bond at one point, which was denied. She filed a writ of habeas corpus with the 14th Court of Appeals requesting bail, explaining why her original denial was a mistake. Mm-hmm. The court set bail for her at $500,000.
Oh.
And she said it was too high.
I wonder how much money she had left.
I know. Probably not that much. She's like, I could handle a $150,000 bail a lot better, as if,
Oh, okay.
she had any say in it.
Let's get that for you. How about you just go free?
I know the only witness called on her behalf during her bail hearing was her stepfather, who said Christine could live with them. We could live with him and Lori if the court was willing to set a lower bond, but they weren't. It had been more than 5 years since the murders took place, but the pain caused by the tragedy and the wounds it left behind on both family and friends, as well as the community as a whole, was just as painful and shockingly real as it felt the day it actually happened. It just was so fresh and raw in everybody's mind. Christine was now 22 years old and had been behind bars for a few years. Several sources reported she'd fallen into prison life and taken to the new lifestyle rather easily, even scoring herself a very large and aptly named girlfriend, Big Mama.
Stop it.
I know.
Stop that.
Before she was sentenced.
That's ridiculous.
I know. She had Big Mama to protect her. Before she was sentenced, the families had an opportunity to read impact statements. George Colorodis had written an emotionally charged testimonial that would allow him for the first time to face his daughter's murderer and address her actions. He had spent thousands of dollars of his own money just trying to find the killer. During this point, Christine was allowed to make a statement, and she came into the courtroom. She was just in tears.
Okay.
Yeah, she wiped her tears and she mouthed things to her mother and her lawyers. And, nobody was buying this bullshit. And George just sat behind her with a look of just absolute disgust on his face. Before ending the hearing, Judge Ellis sentenced Christine to serve a mandatory life sentence, which would amount to 40 years behind bars before she was eligible for parole. Christine did try to appeal. On November 29, 2008, she filed an appeal based on the argument that the trial court abused its discretion in setting her bail at $500,000.
Okay.
But that was denied. And so she is sitting in prison today and hopefully rotting away.
That's just unbelievable.
I know.
How violent.
I know, and I'm still trying to figure out, why.
Just for what, money and drugs?
Money and drugs?
Being shot in the private area.
I know, right? And these girls were her friends.
Right.
They helped her.
What the hell is that?
I just don't understand why.
She just turned, her nickname, Psycho.
Psycho. I know, and I'm like, whose idea was it? It's probably hers.
Yeah, something bad happened. Wow, what a waste of a whole bunch of lives.
I know, just terrible.
That's so fucked up.
Terrible.
Wow, goodness.
Thank you, Tonya,
I never
for listening.
heard this.
I know. I kind of knew the story. I didn't know the details.
I didn't even know it.
Thank you very much for listening, everyone. If you haven't already.
Yeah, thank you all.
Hit that subscribe/follow.
Do it.
That helps us a lot.
Yeah, it does.
And if you would like to see photos from this episode, you can go to our website, crimesandconsequences.com. You can also find information there about becoming a Patreon member. And what that means is we have unreleased episodes. You can get our weekly episodes commercial-free, early release. And you can find out all the information on our website, or you can go to patreon.com/TNTcrimes to find out more.
Yeah. And you can subscribe on Apple and get the same thing.
Exactly. And just to clear things up, Apple, you don't have to pay to listen to our weekly free episodes.
Yeah, I'm kind of sick of getting those reviews.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of bad reviews saying, how dare us charge money, but there's a free weekly episode every week. And
every week.
If you've gotten this far listening in this episode, you know this.
Yeah.
Tell all your friends, please.
Tell all your friends.
Spread the word. We should be releasing our Christmas merch soon.
Oh, yeah.
If any of you are interested in giving gifts to your favorite Crimes and Consequences fan, or maybe ask for it yourself.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, just check it out. The merch is on our website, crimesandconsequences.com. You can also find us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, at Hardcore True Crime. And I think that's it for now.
I really appreciate you, Tonya. That was a great story.
Talia. And I appreciate
everybody out there. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Until our next episode.
Don't kill each other.
Bye.